Logan Reaper. Kane awoke to the cold sting of metal restraints biting into his wrists. The air smelled of sweat, rust, and something acrid, something alive. His head throbbed, a byproduct of whatever alien sedative had been used to transport him here. He flexed his fingers, testing their mobility, and took in his surroundings. A dimly lit cell, its walls reinforced with some composite metal he didn't recognize, held him and 3 others. Sergeant Cole Briggs was already awake, his sharp eyes scanning for weaknesses in their cage. Darius Tank Walker leaned against the far wall, arms crossed over his chest, unreadable as always. The last man, Eli Carter, sat on the floor, fingers tracing an invisible pattern against the cold surface. Kane had worked with all of them before in some capacity, but never like this. A heavy door groaned open, spilling bright light into the cell. A creature loomed in the doorway, tall and plated in a chitinous exoskeleton, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "You wake," it rasped in broken English. "Good. You fight now." No further explanation was given. The restraints disengaged with a metallic hiss, and before Kane could stand, a force field slammed into him, driving him forward through the doorway. His squad followed, their movements controlled but tense. There was no need for words. They understood what was happening. They were being thrown into an arena, and if they wanted to live, they'd have to kill. The corridor emptied into a massive amphitheater, alien spectators packed into the stands, their roars reverberating through the steel and stone. Kane took in the details with the efficiency of a soldier assessing a battlefield. The ground was uneven, littered with the remains of past combatants, some skeletal, others more recent. The air carried the coppery tang of blood. Across the arena, a gate trembled as something massive stirred behind it. A voice boomed overhead, mechanical and guttural, relaying a message in a language Kane didn't recognize before shifting to something approximating English. New challengers. Humans. Fresh blood. Odds unfavorable. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kane didn't acknowledge it. He had survived worse odds. The opposing gate slammed open, and the Draskians stepped forward. They were brutes, 8 feet tall, with armored scales covering thick, muscled bodies. Their movements were slow but deliberate, their claws curling in anticipation. Kane had seen something similar in the jungles of South America. Predators that didn't need to be fast, because nothing survived close combat with them. Darius exhaled through his nose. "Big bastards." Eli smirked. "I've dropped bigger." Cole cracked his knuckles. "Keep talking. Maybe they'll die laughing." Kane was already moving, scanning the terrain, noting the uneven ground, the bones, the discarded weapons rusting in the dust. There was no strategy in what the crowd expected. The Draskians would rush them, overwhelm them with sheer force. That meant they needed to break formation, turn the battlefield against them. Tank, keep them focused. Cole, find me an opening. Eli, we need weapons. No arguments. They understood. The Draskians charged. Darius met them head-on, dodging the first swipe and driving his elbow into the nearest brute's throat. It reeled back, surprised, but not injured. Another came at him, swinging a massive arm, and he ducked, using its momentum against it. It stumbled forward, off balance for just a second. Cole was there, sliding low, grabbing a broken spear from the ground and jamming the jagged end under the creature's chin. It shrieked, stumbling back, blood gushing from a wound. Eli darted past the chaos, eyes locked on the remains of a fallen warrior. He crouched, yanked free a serrated blade, then another. One for himself, one for Kane. He tossed it without looking, and Kane caught it mid-stride. The crowd was still jeering, but there was a shift in tone, a realization that the humans weren't playing by the expected rules. Kane closed the distance to his target, dodging the heavy, clumsy strike aimed at him. He stepped in, fast and ruthless, slashing deep across the creature's thigh. It howled, staggering. He pivoted, drove the blade up into the exposed gap beneath its ribs, twisted, and yanked it free. The Draskian collapsed, choking on its own blood. Darius was still locked in with the last one, trading blows that would have shattered lesser men. The Draskian grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. Cain moved to intercept, but Cole was faster, launching himself onto the creature's back, wrapping an arm around its thick neck, and driving the broken spear shaft into the soft tissue behind its skull. The brute stiffened, its grip loosening. Darius twisted free, landing hard, then surged forward, grabbing the creature's head in both hands and wrenching it violently. The crack was audible even over the din of the crowd. Silence fell over the arena. The announcer hesitated before finally speaking. Humans win. The crowd erupted, half in outrage, half in exhilaration. Cain turned his gaze upward, finding the observation deck. A figure stood there, armored in deep crimson, his expression unreadable. Zirak the Warden, the one who controlled the games, the one who controlled their lives. Cain held his stare for a moment longer than necessary before turning away. He had made his move. Now, he had to plan for what came next. The bodies were still cooling when the next challenge was announced. There was no rest, no moment to gather themselves. The humans had drawn blood, and now the arena demanded more. Logan wiped the blade clean against his forearm, smearing dark alien ichor across his skin. Across from him, Darius rolled his shoulder, testing the limits of a bruised muscle, while Cole pried his makeshift spear from the last Draskian's corpse. Eli had already moved to the edge of the arena, scanning for exits, for weaknesses, for anything that might give them an edge. The crowd's roar had shifted. The initial laughter and scorn had given way to something more dangerous: interest. The humans weren't supposed to win. They weren't supposed to survive. Yet here they stood, bloodied but alive. A new gate groaned open, spilling harsh artificial light onto the sand. Another voice, different from the first announcer, filled the arena. Unexpected, entertaining. But one victory means nothing. Let's see how long they last. From the darkness of the tunnel, new figures emerged, this time, not beasts. These were warriors. The first was a towering insectoid, sleek black chitin covering its body like segmented armor. Twin blades extended from its forearms, clicking together in a steady rhythm. Beside it, a hulking mass of cybernetic muscle stomped forward, its mechanical limbs whirring with each movement. The last two moved with a predator's grace, their elongated heads featureless except for glowing slits where eyes should have been. Cain inhaled slowly. This was different. The first fight had been a test, a spectacle. This was an execution. They're not playing anymore, Cole murmured, spinning the spear in his grip. They think we got lucky, Eli said. They're wrong. Darius exhaled sharply, rolling his neck. Let's show him. The insectoid moved first, crossing the distance in a blink. Logan barely brought his blade up in time to deflect the first strike, the force of it sending a tremor through his arm. The creature didn't hesitate, pressing forward with a flurry of razor-sharp attacks. Cain ducked low, shifting his weight, narrowly avoiding a decapitating slice. Darius intercepted the cybernetic brute, absorbing the first blow with a grunt before driving his shoulder into the thing's midsection. It barely budged. A piston-powered fist slammed into his side, sending him skidding across the sand. He coughed, spat blood, and pushed himself upright. Cole and Eli faced the twin predators, moving in sync as they tested their opponents. The creatures flickered in and out of visibility, their bodies shimmering with some kind of cloaking tech. Cole swung wide, aiming for where one had been a second earlier, but hit nothing but air. Eli caught movement to his left, spun, and slashed upward. His blade met resistance, drawing a hiss and a spray of dark blood. Cain caught an opening. The insectoid's next strike came an inch too high, and he capitalized, stepping inside its guard and slamming the hilt of his blade into its exposed mandibles. A crack echoed through the arena. The creature reeled back, momentarily dazed. Kane didn't let it recover. He drove his knee into its midsection, forced it down, and in one fluid motion, brought his blade down between its segmented plates. The crowd roared. Darius feinted right, baiting the cyborg into a wide swing, then shifted at the last second. The thing's massive fist crashed into the sand, and Darius struck, slamming both fists into the exposed wiring beneath its ribs. Sparks flew as it convulsed, its mechanical limbs spasming uncontrollably. He didn't stop. He grabbed a loose shard of metal from the ground and rammed it up into the creature's exposed throat. The lights behind its cybernetic eyes flickered and died. Eli and Cole worked in tandem, moving faster than their shifting opponents. The cloaking tech was good, but it wasn't perfect. There was a shimmer, a flicker of displacement against the dust-heavy air. Eli angled his blade, forcing one of the creatures into Cole's path. Cole lunged, driving the spear through its midsection, pinning it to the arena floor. The last predator hesitated. It was alone now, its allies dead. The humans were still standing. Kane turned his blade in his grip, letting the light catch on the bloodied edge. He stared down the alien, expression unreadable. It ran. The gate it had emerged from had not yet closed. It sprinted back toward the darkness, disappearing into the tunnels. The crowd erupted again, this time not with outrage, but exhilaration. Zirak stood in his observation deck, motionless. His jaw tightened, his mandibles twitching in thought. The humans had won again, not by brute force, but by something the others lacked. They adapted. They learned. They fought like soldiers, not animals. And that made them far more dangerous than he had anticipated. Kane exhaled, scanning the battlefield. The sand was soaked in alien blood. His men were battered but still breathing. That was what mattered. But he knew this was only the beginning. The rules had changed. And now, the real fight was about to begin. The cell reeked of sweat and blood, a metallic tang that clung to the back of the throat. Logan sat on the floor, back against the cold steel wall, absently wrapping a strip of fabric around a gash on his forearm. The fight had been brutal, but they had survived. Again, that was the problem. Across from him, Eli crouched near the cell's barred entrance, fingers drumming lightly against the metal. They're taking too long. They're recalculating, Cole said, stretching his bruised shoulder. We weren't supposed to make it this far. Now they're deciding whether to kill us in the next round or keep milking the spectacle. Darius exhaled, rolling his head against the wall. They'll try something new. They have to. Kane agreed. They had broken the system. The first fight had been a test. The second, an execution. They had flipped both on their heads. Now Zirak and his overseers were scrambling. Boots clanked against the corridor outside. Heavy, deliberate. The cell door slid open with a low hiss, and two armored guards stepped inside, weapons drawn but not raised. Between them stood a smaller figure, draped in deep crimson. Zirak. The warden regarded them in silence for a moment, his mandibles clicking softly. His compound eyes took in each of them, lingering on the dried blood and bruises that marked their skin. You fight well, he said at last. His voice was smooth, calculated. Too well. Kane didn't move. Is that a problem? Zirak tilted his head. It is an anomaly, and anomalies disrupt order. He took a slow step forward, the guards tensing at his movement. This place thrives on balance. Fighters rise, they fall. Spectacle is sustained. You, however, have broken that cycle. Cole snorted. Sorry to mess up your blood sport. Zirak's mandibles twitched in something that could have been amusement. You misunderstand. I do not wish to see you die yet. He gestured toward the corridor. You will follow. The humans exchanged glances. No orders needed to be given. They fell into step behind him, the guards closing in at their flanks. They wound through a series of corridors, past cells filled with other fighters, some watching with dull resignation, others with faint glimmers of curiosity. The path led upward, away from the stench of death and into something new. A war room. Massive holographic displays flickered to life as Zirac approached the central console. Tactical maps, fight records, and most interestingly, schematics of the arena itself. "You have shown an ability no others possess," Zirac said, gesturing to a frozen image of their last fight. "You think beyond the immediate. You adapt. You work as one." His gaze locked onto Kane. "That makes you dangerous. And valuable." Darius crossed his arms. "What's your play?" Zirac's mandibles curled inward. "I wish to make you more." Kane narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Zirac tapped the console, and the displays shifted. A new set of images appeared, different from the crude slaughter of the arena. These showed war. Skirmishes beyond the Colosseum walls. Fleets in orbit. Armed soldiers marching under banners Kane didn't recognize. "There's another game," Zirac said. "Beyond this pit, beyond the spectacle. A war between those who rule and those who would see them burn." Eli let out a low whistle. "Let me guess. You're in the second camp." Zirac inclined his head. "This empire thrives on control, on keeping those beneath them in chains, entertaining the masses, while true power remains untouched." He turned, eyes narrowing. "I have played my role, but I have also watched. I have seen what you can do. You are not like the others." Kane held his gaze. "And you want to use us. I want to unleash you." Zirac tapped the display again, bringing up a blueprint of the Colosseum's outer defenses. "The games have limits. The war does not." Darius let out a slow breath. "You're saying we stop fighting for the crowd and start fighting for something real?" Zirac nodded. Cole rubbed a hand over his jaw. "And if we say no?" The warden exhaled through his mandibles. "Then you will die in the next fight. I will ensure it." Silence stretched between them. The choice was clear. Stay in the pit, fight until they made a mistake, and die for the amusement of an empire. Or step into the unknown, where the stakes were real, where they had a chance to break something bigger than the games. Kane looked at his team. Eli smirked. Was getting bored of the arena anyway. Darius cracked his knuckles. "Hell, we're already fighting. Might as well make it count." Cole exhaled. "Let's burn it down." Kane turned back to Zirac. "Then let's get to work." The alarm screamed across the Colosseum, an unnatural wail that sent guards scrambling. The spectacle was over. The slaughter was about to begin, but not in the way the overseers had planned. Kane moved first, his knife flashing as he gutted the nearest sentry. The alien crumpled, gurgling, as Darius yanked a rifle from another's grasp and slammed its stock into the guard's skull. Eli and Cole slipped through the chaos, their blades finding soft flesh and exposed joints, cutting through the opposition with brutal efficiency. They weren't gladiators anymore. They were soldiers again. The plan had been simple. Use the next fight as cover, breach the armory, and take the fight directly to the heart of the Colosseum's control center. Zirac had provided the intel. They had provided the will to execute. The pit's outer corridors were a maze of steel and stone, but the humans moved with purpose, cutting down anything that stood in their path. The crowd above roared, unaware that their entertainment had spilled beyond the arena. The spectacle had always been controlled, contained. Now it was something else. Kane pressed himself against the wall as a squad of enforcers stormed past, plasma rifles sweeping in search of the disturbance. He counted 3, then a fourth lingering behind. Rookie mistake. He grabbed the straggler by the throat, yanking him into the shadows before the alien could scream. A sharp twist, a crack of cartilage, and the body slumped. Cole signaled from ahead. "Controls 2 levels up. We take it. We shut this place down." Eli wiped a streak of dark blood from his cheek. "And what about the warden?" Darius smirked, chambering a fresh round into his stolen rifle. "He better be right behind us." Zirac had made his move the moment the chaos started, slipping away to sow discord among the higher ranks. If he succeeded, the Empire's grip on the Colosseum would shatter from the inside. If he failed, he would be another corpse in the rebellion's wake. A blast door loomed ahead, reinforced plating humming with an energy field. The humans crouched low, surveying the defenses. Automated turrets tracked movement in steady arcs. 2 guards stood at the panel, unaware of their impending deaths. Kane tapped his earpiece. Eli. Eli nodded, already moving. He slipped into the shadows, navigating the blind spots of the sentries with practiced ease. The moment one shifted his weight, Eli was there, a blade sliding between his ribs. The second barely turned before Cole's thrown knife buried itself in his throat. Darius sprinted forward, slamming the override panel with a stolen keycard. The security field flickered, then dropped. Move. They surged through the breach. The control room was a cavernous expanse of monitors and consoles, overseers barking orders into comms as they tried to re-establish control. The humans didn't give them the chance. Cole opened fire first, dropping the nearest technician. Kane vaulted over the central console, driving his blade into the lead officer's chest before tearing a plasma pistol from his belt. Eli and Darius cleared the remaining operators, bodies collapsing over flashing screens. The fight lasted seconds. The aftermath stretched in silence. Kane exhaled, scanning the controls. The entire Coliseum was at their fingertips. Eli cracked his knuckles. So, burn it down. Kane nodded. Burn it down. Darius slammed his fist onto the emergency override. Sirens flared, the overhead lights shifting to an ominous crimson. A voice echoed across the stadium, automated, cold. Containment breach detected. Evacuation protocols engaged. ***. Above, the crowd's excitement turned to confusion, then fear, as containment fields collapsed and caged warriors were set free. The spectacle had become a massacre. Zirak's voice crackled through their stolen comms. You've done it. The Empire will not recover from this. Cole turned, raising a brow. And you? A pause. Then amusement. I have my own exit. The humans moved. The Colosseum was unraveling, and they had no intention of being buried with it. They reached the outer gates as the sky split with fire, the Empire's forces scrambling to respond. But the humans were already ghosts, slipping into the chaos they had created. The pit was gone. The war had just begun,